There is no better feeling in personal finance than paying off a debt. You make that final payment, you close the account, you feel the weight lift. You feel like you did something real, something responsible, something your parents would be proud of. And in that moment of pure financial satisfaction, you might be making one of the most expensive mistakes of your life. Because the feeling of being debt-free and the financial reality of being debt-free are two completely different things. And the personal finance industry has been confusing them profitably for decades. Welcome to Top Finance. Today we're going after one of the most sacred cows in personal finance. The idea that paying off all your debt as fast as possible is always a smart move. It isn't, and the math is going to make you uncomfortable. First, let's establish something that most debt advice conveniently ignores. Debt is not a single thing. Treating all debt the same is like treating a paper cut and a broken leg with the same amount of panic. There are two fundamentally different kinds of debt, and confusing them is costing people hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetimes. The first kind is toxic debt, credit cards, payday loans, buy now, pay later schemes, personal loans at a double-digit interest rate. This is debt that charges you 18, 24, sometimes 30% or more per year. This debt is genuinely dangerous. This debt is designed to keep you paying forever. This is the debt that eats your financial life from the inside out. The second kind is a leverage debt, mortgages, federal student loans, car loans at the low rates, business loans. This is the debt that typically charges you 3 to 7% per year. This debt is not your enemy. In many cases, this debt is actually your tool. The personal finance gurus, especially the loud ones, the ones with the radio shows and 7 baby steps, treat both kinds of debt as the same moral failure. Pay it all off, all of it, as fast as possible. Debt is slavery, debt is the enemy. The message sells book, it does not build wealth. Here is the number that changes everything. The average annual return of the S&P 500 over the last 50 years is approximately 10% before inflation, around 7% after inflation. Now look at your mortgage. If you have a mortgage at 4% interest, which millions of Americans locked in before rates spiked, every extra dollar you throw at that mortgage saves you 4% in interest. Every dollar you put into an index fund historically earns you 10%. The math is not subtle. You are choosing between saving 4% and earning 10% every single month for decades. If you have a $200,000 mortgage at the 4% and you make extra $500 payment every month to pay it off early, you saved roughly $30,000 in interest over the life of the loan. That feels incredible. If you invest that $500 per month into index fund for 20 years at 10% average return, you end up with approximately $380,000. Same money, same discipline, completely different outcome. The person who paid off their mortgage early saved $30,000 and felt amazing. The person who invested instead built $380,000 and retired early. Both feel equally responsible, only one actually is. We need to talk about the elephant in the room, Dave Ramsey, the most influential personal finance voice in America for 30 years. The man who has helped millions of people get out of a credit card debt and genuinely changed lives. Also the man whose advice applied beyond toxic debt actively prevents wealth building for the people who follow it most faithfully. Ramsey's baby steps tell you to pay off all debt before investing except the 401k match. All of it, student loans, car loans, mortgage, everything debt-free before you seriously invest. For someone drowning in credit card debt at 24% interest, this advice is genuinely life-saving. Get out from under the toxic debt, stop the bleeding, absolutely. But Ramsey applies the same logic to 3% student loan, a 4% mortgage, 2.9% car loan, and at those interest rates the math completely reverses. You are not not saving yourself from debt, you are hiding from the market while inflation quietly erodes your purchasing power and compound interest works for everyone except you. Ramsey's system is psychologically brilliant. It is mathematically flawed for anyone whose debt is below the historical market return rate. The peace of mind of being debt-free is real and valuable, but peace of mind is not a retirement account. Let's be fair, because nuance is what separates us from the right light crowd. These are the absolute situations where aggressively paying off debt is the correct financial decision. If your debt interest rate is above 7%, pay it off aggressively before investing heavily. At that rate, the guaranteed return of eliminating the debt beats the uncertain return of the market. If your debt is causing you genuine psychological damage, losing sleep, affecting relationship, creating anxiety that impacts your work and your health, the value of eliminating that stress has real financial value. A person who sleeps well and works clearly outperforms a person who is technically optimized but mentally destroyed. If your debt has variable interest rates, pay it off. A variable rate loan in a rising rate environment can quickly cross the threshold where elimination beats investment. And if you have no emergency fund, build that first before investing or aggressively paying debt. Because without an emergency fund, every unexpected expense becomes new toxic debt at the credit card rates. The framework is simple. Below 4%, invest first. Above 7, pay it off first. Between 4 and 7, split the difference based on your risk tolerance and psychological needs. So if the math is clear, why does the pay off everything advice dominate? 3 reasons. First, it's emotionally satisfying. Paying off debt feels like winning. Investing in an index fund and watching it slowly grow over 30% feels like nothing. Human brains are terrible at valuing slow, invisible compound growth against immediate emotional relief. Second, it's safe advice to give. A financial commentator who tells you to pay off all your debt cannot be blamed when the market crashes. A financial commentator who tells you to invest instead of paying off debt looks very bad in bear markets. Safe advice protects the advisor. It doesn't always protect you. Third, the debt elimination industry is enormous. Credit counseling, debt consolidation, financial coaching, Dave Ramsey entire media empire. These businesses exist because debt payoff is a completely emotional narrative. There is no equivalent industry built around boring, optimal interest rate arbitrage. It doesn't sell, it doesn't inspire, it doesn't get people to call into radio show and scream, "I am debt free." The optimal financial move is rarely the emotionally satisfying one. That gap is when the industry lives. So here's where we land. Toxic debt, credit card, payday loans, anything above 7%, attack it aggressively, ruthlessly. The math and psychology both point the same direction. Low interest debt, mortgages, federal student loans, anything below 4%, stop treating it like emergency. Make your payment, invest the difference. Let compound interest work for you instead of against you. Medium rate debt 4 to 7%, use your judgment. Factor in your risk tolerance, factor in your sleep quality, split the difference if you need to. And next time you feel that overwhelming urge to throw every spare dollar at your mortgage instead of your investment account, stop. Run the math, make sure you're making financial decision and not just emotional one dressed up as a responsibility. Feeling debt-free and being wealthy are not the same thing. One of them is a feeling, the other one pays for your retirement. This is a tough finance. We do the math so you don't have to feel your way to poverty. Subscribe because the next video is going to make your financial advisor uncomfortable too. And if Dave Ramsey is your entire financial strategy, he's great for getting out of a credit card debt. After that, do the math yourself.